The influence of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass is easily one of the most influential writers in American history. Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 as an American slave to an unknown white father and a mother who was a slave. At around age 7 or 8, he was sent to live with a family in Baltimore. His mistress there started to teach him the alphabet and how to read short words. Upon his master finding out what his wife had done, Douglass is given the key to obtaining his freedom in observing his master's objection. Douglass recalls this objection in his narrative. If you give him an inch, he will take an ell. If you teach him how to read, there would be no keeping him. It would forever unfit him to be a slave. It would make him discontented and unhappy. This strong objection told Douglass that there was power in knowledge. Douglass goes on teaching himself how to read and to write. Eventually, Douglass escapes slavery and obtains his freedom. His ability to read and write, along with his first-hand experiences as a slave, give Douglass a unique voice in the fight to abolish slavery. Frederick Douglass is a perfect example of why freedom of speech is such an important right. Douglass, in many ways, was the voice of the whole slave population, as it was rare for a slave to be able to read or write, or to be as articulate, to have a platform of which to be heard. Most slaves were kept as uneducated as possible, with the idea that the smarter a person is, the harder they are to control. Masters made slaves feel they depended on them for security and protection. Oftentimes, such as the case of Frederick Douglass, they even withheld basic human knowledge, such as a slave's own date of birth. Because of Douglass's unique circumstances and opportunities, and his keen ability to analyze slavery from an objective standpoint, and not just his own personal experiences, Douglass became a very successful public figure and a very significant figure in the fight to abolish slavery. He used his life to fight for this cause. The subject matter was so controversial that at times Douglass even had to flee the country to ensure his safety. Even with the dangers of being a former slave and abolitionist, Douglass continued on publicly and fearlessly. He was truly an American hero. He did live to see the abolition of slavery, with President Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1869. But freedom was just the start for Douglass. He knew it was not enough and continued on campaigning for equal rights for all races and genders. He was not afraid to confront the American public and use writing and public speaking as a way to do so, as for him, the pen was mightier than the sword. He was involved in and owned a number of newspapers. He published his life story, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, which shed light on the treatment of slaves, and also shed light on how slavery was bad for both the slave and slave owner. He made a number of political public speeches calling out the hypocrisy of the nation, one of which was his July 5th speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July." It takes a lot of courage for someone to stand up for what they believe is right, going against the masses and saying to them what they are doing is wrong. Frederick Douglass was never short of courage. If it wasn't for Frederick Douglass' contribution to the abolitionist cause and the voice he gave to a group of oppressed people, who knows how long it might have taken to abolish slavery. Frederick Douglass's vision of what America should be is something we still strive towards today. We are lucky to have him as a part of our history, to have pushed this country in the right direction.